What if a single ride could erase you from the world? In 1976, on a cold Halloween night in the withering town of Black Hollow, the Ferris wheel rose against the harvest moon like the broken ribs of a beast. Children wore masks, scarecrows bowed in the fields, and the air smelled of burnt leaves and cider. But when the clock struck midnight, those who boarded the towering ride never returned. Their laughter turned to silence. Their seats swung empty against the October sky, and the carnival lived on without them. If you dare linger here, subscribe and step deeper into the shadows. This is no ordinary tale. This is a ritual of voices long silenced. The morning after the wagons came down from the northern road, Black Hollow woke to the sound of hammers, ropes, and the groaning stretch of canvas pulled against the wind. By the riverbank, where the reeds bent low and the water moved sluggish as blood in winter, the carnival rose like a wound opening in the land. The tents were striped in faded crimson and black, the colors muted, eaten away by mildew and rot. Their peaks sagged like weary shoulders, yet the workers set them with precision, driving stakes into the damp soil with the dull rhythm of a funeral drum. Children gathered at the edge of the clearing, their masks still dangling from strings around their necks. Coins clinked in their pockets, nickels, dimes, quarters they had begged or stolen from weary parents who told them not to go. Still they came. Their eyes, wide as the harvest moon, followed every strange figure that stepped from the wagons. The workers did not laugh, did not speak. They moved in silence, their faces obscured by masks painted in grotesque expressions, grins too wide, eyes too hollow, cheeks streaked in black. Some looked like dolls cracked by time, others like skulls grinning beneath thin parchment skin. By dusk, the Ferris wheel had risen. It groaned as it turned against the sky, a skeletal frame taller than the church steeple, its spokes stretching like broken ribs across the orange face of the harvest moon. Children gasped at its size, at the way its carriages swung like cages. But the elders turned their faces away. They had seen this before. They remembered the year when riders never stepped off, when the carriages returned empty and cold, dripping with something darker than rain. The air thickened as the carnival lights flickered on. They did not burn with fire as lanterns and torches should. Instead, they glowed faintly, with a sickly pallor, as if they drew their light from bones buried beneath the soil. The glow clung to the canvas, bled into the fog rising from the river, and painted the faces of the children with an unholy sheen. And the smell came with it, faint at first, then sharper, iron, rust, blood. Parents wrinkled their noses, pulled their children back and whispered warnings. But the children only laughed nervously, eager to step closer, eager to give themselves to wonder. The rides stirred before the night fully swallowed the town. The calliope wheezed a tune warped by age, notes bending and cracking like bones under pressure. The carousel spun, its painted horses chipped and eyeless, their wooden mouths full of splinters. The Ferris wheel turned with a sound like metal screaming, the carriages rattling, though no one had yet climbed aboard. When the first children offered their coins, the workers took them without a word. Not a smile, not a nod, not even a hand brushing skin. Just the cold weight of the transaction, the coin vanishing into a gloved palm, the child stepping forward. And then the screams began. At first they were bright with laughter, the wild shrieks of children on a thrill. But as the rides moved faster, as the lights flickered and dimmed, the pitch of those screams shifted. Laughter bent into something else, something sharp, something fearful. Black Hollow pretended not to hear. Doors shut, curtains drawn, prayers whispered. But outside, at the edge of the field, one of the scarecrows tipped its head. Its straw neck cracked as if listening. By the third night, the Ferris wheel had become the carnival's beating heart. It loomed against the sky like some enormous relic dug up from the earth, rust caked thick on its iron frame, bolts weeping streaks of dark oil that looked like blood under the lantern light. The carriages dangled on their chains like cages, creaking even when no wind stirred. Children dared each other to ride, pressing quarters into pale gloved hands that never warmed to the touch. The workers, silent behind their masks, ushered them inside with gestures that felt too rehearsed, too solemn. as though this was not a game at all, but a ritual. From the town below, the wheel appeared almost beautiful, its rim glowing against the harvest moon, a crown of fire rising above the fields. But those who drew closer knew better. The glow was not steady. It pulsed. It flickered with a rhythm almost like a heartbeat, and with every turn the metal groaned in protest, as though the wheel carried weight far greater than flesh and bone. Some swore it turned even when empty. One farmer claimed he saw a carriage sway violently in the dead of night, as though invisible passengers had shifted all at once. The children who rode down came back with changed faces. Some laughed louder, their eyes too wide, their smiles stretched until they trembled. Others grew quiet, pale as milk, unwilling to speak of what they saw from the top. They whispered instead to each other, hands clutched tight, as though something above the town had shown them its face. One girl, no older than 10, was seen holding her hand to her ear, muttering to someone no one else could hear. When pressed, she hissed like a cornered animal and ran back toward the ride. And yet, not all who climbed off the wheel returned. By the fourth night, whispers filled the hollow. A boy named Eli was seen climbing into a carriage with his sister, but when the ride ended, only the girl stumbled out, her hair wet, her cheeks stained with something too dark to be dirt. She would not speak. She only cried, pointing toward the sky where the wheel turned slowly, its carriages groaning. Eli's seat swayed, dripping. The workers latched it shut, their painted faces tilted, and the wheel continued. The elders watched from the edge of the square, lips pressed thin, eyes hollow. They remembered. They remembered the last time the carnival came, when the Ferris wheel became the maw of the town itself. Yet they said nothing, because no one dared name it aloud. To speak its truth was to call it closer, to admit the pact, and so they let the children ride. But as the moon rose higher, its light spilling cold across the fields, something stirred in the shadows of the wheel. Some swore they saw faces, not painted, not masked, but pale and eyeless, pressed against the glass of the highest carriages. Their mouths opened wide, not in laughter, not in joy, but in silent screams swallowed by the October wind. That night, when the wheel slowed to a halt, one carriage swung gently, empty. Yet its floor dripped with something thick that spattered in the dirt below. It began with whispers, not the kind exchanged between children in line, nor the mutterings of uneasy parents, but something else, something that seemed to bleed from the wheel itself. Riders would return pale and trembling, clutching at their ears as if something had crawled inside. When pressed, they spoke of voices that slid against their thoughts like knives through silk. A mother's voice long dead, a father buried in the churchyard, the soft laughter of siblings drowned years ago. The Ferris wheel seemed to remember every soul the town had lost, and it returned them as echoes to those who dared ascend. Simon Barlow was the first to break. A boy of 12, braver than most, he had ridden the wheel twice in one night, boasting that nothing scared him. But when he stepped off the second time, his face was ash-white, his lips cracked, his eyes bloodshot. He muttered fragments that made no sense. The corn is hollow. They're waiting in the straw. The moon has a mouth, and clawed at his own arms until his nails bled black. His fingernails darkened in the days after, turning the color of rot, and then his hair streaked with white, as if winter had touched only him. The town tried to hush it away. His parents lit their lantern earlier than any others, placing 3 on the porch for good measure. Yet even with the flames guttering against the October wind, shadows seemed to slip inside their home. Neighbors reported hearing whispering through the shutters at night, voices speaking in a language no one recognized. And then came the cold. Frost crusted the window panes of the Barlow house, though the nights were mild, and Simon shivered so violently that the bed shook. On the 7th night of the carnival, Simon vanished. His window was open, curtains fluttering in the harvest breeze. Straw was scattered across the floorboards, mixed with flecks of soil as though something had been dragged inside from the fields. His lantern, the one meant to guard him, had gone dark hours before midnight. His bed was empty, the sheets damp with something foul-smelling and iron-rich. The town grew restless, yet none spoke too loudly. The parents whispered of leaving, of packing wagons, of fleeing before the wheel claimed more of their children. But the elders only shook their heads, their lips pressed thin as dried leaves. Leaving would not save them, they said. The carnival would find them wherever they went. The pact was older than the hollow itself. The silence in their voices was not ignorance, but knowledge too terrible to name. Still the carnival blazed. Still the children lined up, drawn forward by some hunger they did not understand. Each ride seemed to call to them, the wheel turning, its spokes cutting across the face of the harvest moon like a clock counting down to something inevitable. And every night, more riders returned with that same hollow look in their eyes, as though something had been taken, or something had been left inside them. That evening, when the wheel slowed at last, one empty carriage swayed gently, the chains creaking. From its dark interior, a whisper slid into the air, too soft for most to hear, but sharp enough to cut the breath of those who did. And it spoke a name. The workers of the carnival were never truly seen. They moved like shadows across the grounds, silent as moths drawn to a flame that did not belong to this world. Their masks, white and brittle as bone, never shifted, never cracked with breath or warmth. Painted grins stretched too wide, pupils inked black, cheeks hollowed with streaks of soot. They handed tickets, latched carriages, tightened ropes, all with movements that felt rehearsed, as though they were not living workers, but effigies wound up by some unseen hand. But among them was one who was different. Taller than the rest, shoulders wrapped in a cloak of stitched leather, he did not move with the still obedience of the others. He lingered at the base of the Ferris wheel, where shadows pooled, holding in his hand a lantern whose flame burned not orange, not gold, but blue, a cold flame, like the glow of gas seeping from a grave. His mask was not pale, but carved, painted in the cruel leer of a jack-o'-lantern. Its grin was jagged, its eyes slanted, and the hollow mouth seemed to whisper, though no words were spoken. The children named him the Keeper of Masks. No adult dared to. They avoided his presence, crossing themselves, dragging their little ones away when he tilted his pumpkin head toward them. Yet still the children returned. They said his lantern called to them in their sleep, glowing through the cracks of shutters and across the fields. They said they dreamed of riding the wheel at midnight, with the keeper watching, his grin glowing brighter than the moon. It was the elders who broke the silence first. In hushed tones, behind closed doors, they spoke of the pact. Long ago, when Black Hollow was new, the soil barren and the winters cruel, the town had begged for survival. And something had answered. A wandering carnival had come, offering laughter, food, warmth, and rides to distract the children from hunger. But every gift has its cost. The wheel took what it wanted, and the keeper marked who would be claimed. In return, the town endured. Crops returned to the fields, the river ran full, and the hollow continued, while other settlements withered into ash. Now, the price had come due again, each night. As midnight approached, the keeper began to chant. His voice did not sound like a man's. It was low, guttural, the sound of earth splitting open, of roots tearing, of something vast and buried dragging itself closer to the surface. And as his chant deepened, the Ferris wheel spun faster. The carriages rocked as though eager to empty themselves. Riders screamed, at first with thrill, then with terror, then with silence as their seats returned hollow. And with each loss, the keeper's lantern flared brighter, casting shadows across the carnival that twisted like ropes around the throats of the living. By the fifth night, the town could no longer deny what was happening. Children were vanishing. The wheel was feeding, and the keeper's mask always turned toward the next in line. That night, beneath the harvest moon, as the lantern's blue flame hissed in the dark, the keeper's carved grin tilted. His hollow eyes locked not on the riders, nor the crowd, but on someone unseen, and for the first time it looked directly at you. Halloween night bled into Black Hollow like a wound that would not close. The air was thick with the smell of burning leaves and cider left to sour in barrels, and the harvest moon hung swollen, a bruised orange eye staring unblinking over the fields. Every house burned its lanterns brighter than ever before, but the flames guttered strangely, bending toward the riverbank, where the carnival pulsed with a light of its own. At the heart of it all, the Ferris wheel turned. Midnight approached, and the wheel seemed to quicken, groaning with a hunger that no grease or gear could soothe. The Keeper of Masks stood beneath it, his blue lantern burning like a shard of ice, his guttural chant rolling through the grounds. It was not song nor prayer, it was command. Each word was older than the town itself, shaking through the bones of every listener, making children cry out in their sleep, and mothers clutch their rosaries until the beads snapped. The carriages filled quickly. Children pressed forward, their masks crooked, their faces pale but determined. Some parents tried to stop them, hands gripping shoulders, but the children broke free, eyes glazed, steps unwavering. It was as if the wheel itself had called them. With every rider that entered, the keeper raised his lantern, and the flames surged higher, painting the fields in unholy light. The wheel spun. Faster, faster. Its chains rattled, its joints shrieked, sparks spat from its spine as though it were tearing itself apart. Yet it did not falter. The riders' screams rose high into the October night, shrill and desperate. But there were other sounds now, too, voices that did not belong to the living. Whispers threading through the shrieks, laughter curdling into howls, sobbing that seemed to echo from beneath the earth itself. Some swore they heard their ancestors calling to them from the carriages, urging them to jump, to surrender, to fall. One by one, the seats began to return empty. Not all, not at once, but enough. A child's mask fluttered down, caught on the fence. A shoe dangled from a carriage that arrived hollow. And once, when the wheel slowed, a small hand gripped the edge of a seat before sliding away, leaving only streaks of something black across the iron rail. The townsfolk wailed, but no one stepped forward. No one dared touch the wheel. The pact was being paid, and the keeper's lantern demanded its due. All they could do was watch, helpless, as the harvest moon swelled and the chants deepened. In the fields beyond the carnival, the scarecrows moved. Their straw arms stretched against the posts, their stitched mouths twisting into grotesque smiles. They leaned forward as though listening, their bodies rattling with each turn of the wheel. Shadows rippled across the cornrows, long and thin, bending unnaturally, stretching toward the town. By the stroke of midnight, the lantern flames across Black Hollow had nearly all died, leaving only the keeper's blue fire burning, brighter than the stars. The Ferris wheel slowed at last, its carriages rocking gently in the silence that followed. The crowd dared to breathe, and then the wheel stopped. 5 seats were empty. The keeper lowered his lantern, and its flame guttered low, as if satisfied. But deep within the machinery of the ride, something groaned, not mechanical, not earthly. A sound like a throat clearing, a hunger not yet finished. The wheel had not yet taken all it wanted. Dawn rose pale and cold over Black Hollow, but no warmth came with it. The river steamed as if something had boiled beneath its surface, and frost clung thick to the windows of every house, though the air should not have been so cold. The carnival was gone. No wagons, no tents, no Ferris wheel rising against the bruised sky. Only the churned mud of the riverbank, deep ruts in the earth and blackened patches where fire had licked the soil. It was as if the carnival had never been there at all, and yet the town was not whole. 5 children were missing. Beds lay empty, covers crumpled, dolls and toy cars scattered across the floor where little hands would never reach again. Parents wept openly in the streets, clutching lanterns that had burned themselves to ash. The elders said nothing. They stood by the fields, staring at the scarecrows. The scarecrows had changed. They were taller now, their straw limbs stretched taut as if swollen with something more than hay. Their stitched mouths curved upward in smiles that had not been sewn there before. Some were missing hats, and tufts of children's hair fluttered from their crowns. The fields whispered when the wind passed, but the sound was wrong. Not the rustle of straw, but the soft hiss of breath. The church bell tolled noon without hands to ring it. Its sound rolled hollow across the town, and the few who dared gather in the square felt it tremble through their bones. They spoke in murmurs of leaving, of packing wagons and abandoning the hollow for good. But others shook their heads, hollow-eyed and broken. Where would they run? The carnival would follow. The pact was not bound to land, but to blood. Black Hollow carried its hunger wherever it went. Night fell again. October 31st had passed, but the shadow of it lingered like smoke that would not clear. Families lit lanterns once more, praying, weeping, clutching their rosaries until their fingers bled. Yet no flames could drive away what had been taken. The wind carried faint music, the warped calliope tune from the carnival, though the fields were empty. Some swore they saw lights moving in the distance, a Ferris wheel spinning against the horizon where no structure stood, and every year after, on Halloween night, the hollow remembered. Lanterns were lit, pumpkins carved, families huddled close. Yet at midnight, without fail, the sound returned. The slow creak of metal turning, the rattling of carriages swinging against the October wind. Always faint, always far, yet close enough to remind them. Parents covered their children's ears, but the little ones still heard it, still dreamed of blue flames flickering beyond the fields. The hollow endured. The crops grew, the river stayed full, the soil remained rich, but the price lingered in every silence, in every whisper that threaded through the fields at night. The scarecrows stood as guardians, or perhaps as warnings, their hollow eyes fixed toward the town. And always the elders kept their silence, never daring to tell the full story, for fear that speaking it might call the wheel back sooner. But stories have a way of surviving. They slip into journals, into lullabies, into the hushed gossip of children who should not know them. And so the tale of the carnival remained, a legend that stained the bones of Black Hollow. And somewhere, beneath the harvest moon, a Ferris wheel turns where no ground holds it, its carriages swinging, its seats waiting for the next generation to board. Black Hollow was already a dying town long before the carnival came back. In the year 1976, the autumn air felt like the slow unraveling of a body that had been buried too shallow in the earth. October spread its brittle light across the crooked houses, and the harvest fields looked like graves marked with sagging pumpkins. Their carved faces, lit weeks too early, had begun to rot in place. Candle flames sputtered behind collapsing orange flesh, their twisted grins resembling skulls giving way to decay. The air smelled of cider gone sour, of wood smoke drifting from chimneys where families huddled in silence. And above all, silence, that strange, unnatural silence that comes when something is waiting. It was the night of the lanterns, an old tradition in Black Hollow that no one dared to break. Along fences, porches, and doorsteps, lanterns were set burning, each flame meant to ward away ancestral spirits that might come wandering too close. But the children, as children always do, whispered their own stories into the smoke. They said the lanterns weren't meant to keep the dead out at all. They were meant to keep something in. A curse, a hunger, a thing bound to the hollow. As the last embers of dusk sank into the woods, those lantern flames trembled like candles at a wake. The children lingered near the fields, masks pressed to their faces. Witches, goblins, and skeletons made of paper and string. They stared at the scarecrows that loomed above the corn rows, black hats tilted, straw-stuffed hands reaching toward the sky. Some swore they saw the heads turn, the hollow sockets shifting toward the glow of the lanterns. Others said they heard straw rustle when no wind stirred. When darkness fully claimed the fields, the children scattered, running home to their mothers' arms. But their whispers hung in the air long after. It was then that the sound began, faint but heavy as an omen. A creaking, a grinding of wheels against stone. Down the northern road, from the woods where no one went after dusk, lanterns flickered as wagons rolled into sight. Horses, thin as bone and wide-eyed as if milk had clouded their vision, pulled a long line of carts shrouded in canvas. The sound of their approach was not festive, but funereal, like a slow march toward the graveyard. The first wagon was crowned with a faded banner, Black Hollow Carnival. The elders froze in place, their eyes full of memory they did not speak aloud. 20 years had passed since those banners last appeared. 20 years since children vanished into the October night. 20 years since the Ferris wheel towered over the fields. The memory was enough to curdle the marrow of the town, yet no one called out to stop the wagons. They simply stood, breath held, waiting for the wheels to pass. And as the first wagon creaked over the hill, a gust of wind tore through the street. Flames shivered, glass chimneys rattled, and one by one, the lanterns guttered. In the silence that followed, the people of Black Hollow felt the weight of something returning, something they had prayed never to see again. That night, as the last flame died in its glass, Black Hollow lost its first lantern.